is not a homeschool channel. This is not a minimalism channel. But what I'm going to tell you today is I'm going to talk about how to simplify your homeschool, because this is an anxiety channel. This is an overwhelmed channel. So we want to tone that down. So if you're overwhelmed with homeschool and you feel like you have so much on your plate and you don't know what to do, I'm going to tell you how I simplify, minimize our homeschool routine. And I have a child who's neurodiverse, so maybe this might help you as well. Okay, well, I chop apples. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do, or that I did, is teach math and English, and then do the timeline of the world. Teaching the timeline of the world, it encompasses geography, science, history. I mean, you can't beat that for one topic. Now, what we do is we start early. So we start early in the morning and we sit down, and basically around breakfast time, we do our morning basket, right? So in the morning basket, that's when we're gonna do our history timeline. That's when we're pulling out books to read that are in line with that theme. Now, I don't teach English myself, if you will. I have a curriculum that I buy for English. I have a curriculum that I buy for math. But the timeline I do myself. Now, there's a book you can buy, I think it's like $5 on Amazon, that I use, and it basically is, it's like a notebook and a journal for the timeline. There's a lot of those out there, but this is for little kids. I created it, it's for little kids. So that's the one that I use, and I generally follow that sequence. So basically from the beginning of the world, if you're secular, you can do that. If you're not, then, skip that part, or, on the 7th day, things like that. And then start from there and I go through basically how the universe started. Then we touch on how life forms. Then you touch on what comes next. Dinosaurs. Then after that is people and humans. And then after that you touch on the Ice Age. Then you do what comes next? The Bronze Age, whatever. Anyway, you go through it. I'll put the list up on the screen. So this is what you do. So you go through the timeline, and then as they get older, you circle back around and do it again. So say you go through the whole year and they're 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 and 7. And then when you go through it again, they're older. So you cover more in depth and more different stuff. Now, you do not have to be an expert on the timeline. All you have to do is you can get the Timeline Smithsonian book, or any timeline book, really. There's quite a few. But I think that one's kind of the easiest. And then just get books that go along with that theme and read those books during breakfast while they're eating. So right there, you have knocked off quite a few subjects on your list, right? And so another thing I do to keep it simple is I use a mastery math. There's spiral math or there's mastery math. And if you're not good at math, I'm not really great at math. So when I look at the spiral math, which is the good and the beautiful, which is, what's another spiral math? The good and the beautiful, that bit Saxon math, it's a little intimidating to me. Whereas when I look at mastery math, like Singapore math or Math Mammoth, it's really simple. It doesn't start until, the Math Mammoth doesn't start until grade 1, which doesn't mean, so there's like a pre-thing. So before that, your kid has to know about shapes and shape identifications and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of a pre-work, but look how simple that book is. For me, it's completely simple because we just go through it and we do one page at a time, basically year round. So go year round to school. I know that sounds crazy, but you don't have to go every day. And so anyway, so we start with breakfast. We do breakfast, and then you can do math, and then you can do English. Now, I have a planner out there, a super simple planner, just so you can do your focus for the month. So like say, January and February, maybe your focus is handwriting. Maybe you have children who need extra help with handwriting, so I don't do like the good and the beautiful language arts. For say, I separate it with spelling, like different spelling programs, the reading program, Handwriting Without Tears, those programs. I do those. So for a few months, we'll focus on reading, and then we'll switch it, but whatever your focus is, okay? So, but every day you do some language arts, and every day you do some math. And then it's kind of free time, or older kids, it's their additional project, whatever classes they're interested in, right? So, and then on weekends, do music. Weekends, do music or art. I know it sounds crazy doing school on a weekend, but it's really not that bad. If you skip your morning basket and you just wake up and you're like, okay, it's Saturday, let's sit down and do a page of math. I mean, that's 20 minutes of your time. It's not like it's an incredible amount of time, and then you don't necessarily feel like you're behind. We go to school about 3 days a week. So in the planner I created, it's pretty simple as far as your weekly and daily schedule. It's got morning basket suggestions. It's got, so it keeps you relatively organized. It also has, I'm separating it into 3 books because it's got the grading portion as well, because maybe where you are, you don't grade. So maybe you don't need a grading portion. Maybe you don't need to do a rubric. A rubric is really it's simpler to try and to do creative writing and things like that. So if you're not into that and you don't need that, well, you might as well not have that in your book as one more thing to overwhelm you. So anyway, that's basically how I keep it simple. Go to school year round. You can take off days. It's not like you're not going to take off days. And when you're done by noon, get up early, and you can be done by 11:30 and noon. I want to be done by 11:30, and so that means we start at breakfast. And it's a relatively simple, easy schedule. And the little kids, don't worry about. I personally don't think you should worry about the little kids and their learning. I mean, the really little kids, if you have a kindergartner and he's just not there yet, he's just not grasping, he just doesn't want to sit down and do it, that's okay. That's okay. I wouldn't worry about that, especially if you're doing like math. Mammoth doesn't start, like I said, till grade 1. But even then, they have those studies that show that kids, if you wait longer, they'll catch on to the work quicker. And also remember too that it's their responsibility. The work is their responsibility. Okay, so it's not your responsibility. You're like a facilitator. You are not an expert. I'm not an expert on the timeline. Now, I did put some fun facts and things in the timeline that you can discuss and stuff, and then you could draw a picture depending on the age of your child or whatever they think is important during that time period to include. But I'm certainly not an expert on the timeline. So anyway, when you hit, so back to your history, geographies. What is it? It's history, geography, and sociology. Is it sociology? Social studies. You're going to hit that because when you go through, because then you hit to the American Revolution, you hit a lot of these major things. You also cover religion as well. So so just try and keep it simple, and maybe do the timeline for say 3 months or 4 or 5 months a year, and then switch. You don't have to be through the entire timeline, and then switch it up and do maybe science focused in the morning and focus on it, or read more about science if there's a specific area of science that interests you. Can you say please like and subscribe?
Please like to like.
And hit the bell for notifications.
Hit the bell for notifications.